Alright, I was not able to find a lot of good first-hand information on towing with a Tesla Model Y. This is our new 2022 Tesla Model Y dual motor long range, and we are going to see how it does towing our little pop-up camper back here. I was able to find that this car is not supposed to tow more than, I believe it was 3,500 pounds. And then the other important note is whatever you hook up to it is not supposed to be pushing down on the hitch with more than 350 pounds. So this seems kind of like the ideal thing to be towing. It's less than 2,000 pounds, and I don't know exactly how much it's pushing down on the hitch here, but I know it's less than 350 pounds because I can lift the tongue here. So this should be perfect type of thing to be towing with this sort of car. And then the other thing I was really curious about, and I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're curious about as well, is what it does to your range. So this road trip that we're taking here is not a terribly long one. We are going from Flagstaff, Arizona to Camp Verde, Arizona. It's about 57 miles here, as you can see. And we are starting out with 285 miles of range. So it's largely downhill on the way there, so I'm not expecting our range to be too bad. I wouldn't be surprised if it does use about 60 miles worth of range because it's downhill, but we are towing a lot more weight than usual, and there's more air resistance and everything. So on the way there, I'm expecting it to take something like 60 miles of range, but then on the way back, because it's uphill, I'm expecting it to take a lot more, maybe as much as triple, but I don't know yet, so we'll find out. You will find out right now how much range it takes to get there, at least. So, boom. All right, welcome to Camp Verde. So, it was supposed to be 57 miles, and we started out with 285 miles of range, and we were down to 238. So we actually only used 47 miles of range on that 57-mile trip. But like I said, that's because it was downhill, so the regenerative braking saved us quite a bit of energy. So yeah, this unfortunately is not going to be like your typical case on the way here. This was definitely like best case scenario, and then on the way back it's going to be definitely worst case scenario because the elevation change between Flagstaff, which is at about 7,000 feet, and Camp Verde, where we're at, is about 3,100 and change, so almost 4,000 feet in elevation change. On the way down, we used less range than the actual distance traveled, and on the way back we're going to be using a lot more range than the distance traveled. We'll find out how much that turns out to be right now. Alright, so I wanted to show you a couple of things here before we pack up and get going. First of all, any RV park, or even a lot of just more typical campgrounds, are going to have a box like this with a 220 volt outlet that you can charge at. Get about 30 miles of range for every hour of charging. So if you just plug in overnight before you leave, you should be good to head out with a full charge like we are here. You can see that we are at about 303 miles of range at the moment, which for our trip home, which is basically 60 miles, should be plenty. You can tell that the car is already taking into account the fact that we're going to be going uphill, gaining a lot of elevation, because it's saying that we're going to get back with about 60% battery, which would be equivalent to roughly 190 miles of range. And so going from 303 miles of range to 190 miles of range, it's expecting us to probably use somewhere between like 110, 120 miles of range for this 60-mile trip. So it's taking the elevation, the uphill, into account already, but it doesn't know that we're going to be towing, so obviously it's going to end up using a little bit more range than that. My hypothesis is that it is going to end up using something like 3 times the actual range. Like to go 60 miles, I'm guessing it's going to use about 180 miles worth of range because it's uphill and because we're towing the trailer, but I will find out in a few hours, and you will find out, right? Okay, so we are back home, and that was very interesting. So, main takeaways here are that we are now at 162 miles of range, starting out with 303, so we used just over 140 miles of range to travel those 60 miles, basically, which was actually less than I was expecting. Like, yeah, obviously it doesn't sound great for 140 miles of range to go just 6 miles, but we did gain about 4,000 feet in elevation. I was actually expecting it to take more like 180 miles of range, and it only took 140, so that was pretty great. And the other big takeaway was that as soon as we started driving, this estimation of how much battery we'd have left when we got back to, or when we got to our destination, jumped to 50%, like you can see here. I remember just a couple of months ago there being a software update that was talking about being better at estimating that number there. And it sounds like it takes elevation into account, it takes the temperature into account, how much you're using your climate control, and apparently it's even taking into account the fact that you're in trailer mode and just like constantly keeping tabs on how much your energy you're using. And so, yeah, like as soon as we started driving with the trailer, it seemed to understand how heavy we were and how much energy we were using to go a certain distance. And it said you're going to get to your destination with 50% of your battery left, which we did. It bounced around a little bit, like in sections where we had to drive a little slower because of construction or something. All of a sudden it would say, oh, you're going to get there with 51, 52%. That kind of thing. It just takes into account how you're driving, and it does a fantastic job of telling you how much battery you're going to end up with by the time you get to your destination. So as long as you're paying attention to that number there, and if it tells you to go to a supercharger to get charged up or anything like that, it does a fantastic job. So yeah, that's pretty much my takeaway. It did great. For towing this type of a trailer, this performed better than I was expecting, frankly. It uses one of these I think they call it a 7-blade plug. One of these guys here. You can see there. You can see where the hooks go in there. Yeah, that's what the tow package looks like on the inside there, and it did a great job as long as you pay attention to what it's telling you on the screen here and do what it suggests. It seems like it works pretty great, so I recommend it. Hope that helps. Also, if you just happen to stumble across this video rather than being one of my regular subscribers, you may also be interested in this other video that I made about how my family and I achieved carbon neutrality and retrofitted our 1970s home to be fully electrified. Thanks.